Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and Prez, in this episode 488. I'm joined, I'll be joined at some point by Prez. He's running a little bit late, but I am joined also by first-time guest of the pod. He is the host of Locked On Pistons. His name is Ku Khalil, if I am pronouncing that correctly. Hopefully I got that right. That is at Ku Khalil on Twitter. How you doing, man? Good to have you on.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. I'm excited to talk about this matchup coming up in just a few days here.
Yeah, on Twitter, the conversation has been great and very, very unbiased, as I've seen. But we're gonna try and keep it cordial. Before we do that, just have to make a few announcements. First, that Strickland has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's $6 here that gets you access to Strickland's podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Ivy's Bozos, a podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Doug, along with Zach Blatter. And you get access to the Strickland Discord. Conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant about the Stephen Moore. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Marino, one of the best in the business. And you get access to Strickland NFL, which you guessed it is a podcast about the NFL that is so like Constantine Metricos and Desmond Novak. There are further tiers. There's $15. Those come with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on product recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. So, without further ado, let's get started. All right. So, the Knicks are obviously playing the Pistons in the first round. That tips off 6 p.m. on Saturday. Towards the end of the season.
You're breaking up. I can't.
About how the Knicks was kind of.
Can you hear me?
So I saw it towards the end of the season. I think you actually wrote an article about the Knicks and how you thought they were kind of putting some of their pieces together. Obviously, they dropped 3 in a row at the end of the season, one of them including to the Pistons. They didn't have OG Anunoby in that game, Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson, whatever. I guess, did your opinion change from when you wrote that article? In terms of how you viewed the Knicks as a potential opponent for the Pistons, or did you kind of like take it for what it was at the end of the season where, you know, the Knicks were maybe resting some guys a little bit? And, you know, to be fair, like the Celtics are obviously, the Celtics and Cavaliers owned us the entire year. So I don't think there's anything you learned from that other than those teams are better than us. But as far as like, just as a matchup for the Pistons, did you take anything from how did your opinion change at all from when you wrote that article to the end of the season?
I would say my opinion hasn't changed as much. I still basically am in the same place I was at that time. The article was about the Pistons' potential playoff matchups peaking at the right time, and despite I remain in the same place because where I was at that time was Indiana is the hardest matchup for the Pistons to go against. They're peaking, they're playing incredible basketball, and they have some matchups the Pistons just can't handle. Notably, Pascal Siakam, I thought would really give them issues, and he had been playing great, and Tyrese had been phenomenal since January. And then we went into the Knicks, who I thought since February 28th, since OG and Mitchell Robinson returned, their defense had jumped to around a top 10 defense since then. So I was thinking to myself, okay, with those guys returning, maybe the defense that was struggling for the majority of this year, maybe that defense is starting to come around now that those guys are fully healthy. And Jalen Brunson, once he gets back, I know their offense slipped to around 17th in the NBA. Once he gets back healthy, that offense will jump back up, and maybe the defense will stabilize a little bit. And if that is the case, it will be a lot harder of a matchup for the Detroit Pistons. Now, I've talked with a few Knicks people over the last week. Obviously, I've done a few shows with Locked On Knicks hosts. I've went on Knicks Fan TV, I believe it's called. Talked to quite a few people, Alex Wolf, Gavin, and I've gotten some mixed answers about what they believe is sustainable about the Knicks defense. And I think that will determine my comfort or my confidence in the Pistons, and my confidence, I guess, as well in the Knicks is, you know, was the defense playing better because OG Anunoby came back and Mitchell Robinson played sparing minutes, or was it that good because Jalen Brunson wasn't playing? They were playing with Miles McBride instead, and they had more active, versatile defenders on the floor at one time, which explains why the offense dipped a little bit, but also would explain why the defense jumped a little bit as well. So would that maintain if Brunson comes back into the lineup? I guess that will be the answer or the question will get answered in the playoffs, but I guess that will determine where my confidence level is with the Pistons being able to pull this series out and the Knicks at all.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And I have a lot of mixed thoughts on that because I think I'm sure you. I mean, like you said, you did two different shows, so I'm sure you already heard this stuff. But you know, a lot of the concern has just been, quite frankly, about Tom Thibodeau, kind of the schemes that he's been running all year, pretty steadily without deviation, and then just some of his lineup usage. And I guess you know we can tie this into the Pistons because you know Tom Thibodeau has long been a proponent and you know consistent with his base coverage is he's going to run drop. That's always going to be what he does. Cade is one of the best drop killers in the league. Probably one of the top 2, 3, 4. I mean, whatever, however you want to parse it, he's up there. And, you know, I think there's a lot of moving pieces as to why did Cade fry the Knicks this season, right? I mean, the first game, I don't even know. I think you just throw that one out of the window. That was such a weird time of the season. It was right at the start. You know, Jaden Ivey was still playing. It was weird. But those 3 games since, Cade's really fried them. And I think a big reason for that is 1, the scheme, 2, like as you've seen in those games, he sticks to his like starting lineup very, very heavily. The Knicks starters have been not good, quite frankly, for a while. I think since the All-Star break, they have a minus 9.2 net rating. And over the course of the season, while the offense has generally been good, even with the struggles of Josh Hart at times, the defense has not really ever gotten together for an extended period with that starting group. So that's one piece of it. And then the other piece is, yeah, like Cat is not a good drop big and he has never been a good drop big. So if you're going to run drop and then it's like this very conservative drop where Cat's almost like, you know, he's not even leaving the restricted area almost. Yeah, he's going to kill you. So I think there's a lot of stuff going on there, which if none of that changes, that's a big plus for the Pistons. And I think that's something that they've capitalized on. Again, the final matchup of the year, I think, is his own thing too. But the 2 games in New York that Detroit won, I thought a big piece of that was they capitalized on those minutes against the starters, especially at the start of the second half of both those games. And then the final thing I will say, and I think this is the one that, or sorry, 2 things real quick. Defensive adjustments, you know, you can talk about how do you want, like the Pistons are going to bring Brunson in the action. How do the Knicks want to defend that? And, you know, you're not going to always switch him onto Cade, obviously. But, you know, if you hard hedge, if you, whatever you choose to do, right, more aggressive coverages, your back end rotations need to be really clean. They need to be on point, and they have not been on point. I mean, the best example of this would be at the end of, I think it was the first game the Pistons won in New York when Malik Beasley hit 2 corner threes right at the end. And that was a function of all of a sudden you're like, okay, now we're going to start, you know, playing at the level or trapping Cade, but your back end, you haven't worked on it. So those rotations are not clean. And now you're giving up an open 3 to like the second best 3-point shooter in the league, basically this season almost. So that's a big concern for me is, okay, sure, maybe the Knicks are going to mix in more coverages. They had a week. I don't know if in a week you can all of a sudden drill all this stuff in. Hopefully I'm mistaken. And then the other part of it is just Josh Hart. Like, and this is not really about Josh Hart himself. This is more about Tom Thibodeau and Josh Hart. Because Tom Thibodeau has not shown a willingness to pull Josh Hart from games when teams are not defending him and they're cramming the paint. And he has not, you could get away with that if he was playing at a high defensive level. That's not something he's done consistently this year, to be generous to him. And then offensively, yeah, like if they're just not defending the guy, you know, you might consider, like you should have to consider putting a Deuce McBride in the game in his place. Will he make those adjustments? And if he's not willing to make those adjustments, you know, those 3 things, yes, like using Mitch, obviously, even with Cat, and that's a big thing. That'll help. That's not really an adjustment. That's just Mitch exists now, so that helps. But the adjustments of how do you cover Cade? Can you execute those coverages? And then just the Josh Hart of it all, where it's like, I get what he brings to the table, but then there are times he's taking more off than he's putting on. And can Tom Thibodeau recognize those instances and adjust? Because he has not done that this season. And honestly, I think in a few of those games, I thought the Pistons used that to their advantage, where they were basically like, yeah, we're not going to defend Josh Hart either. So that's what I would say are like the biggest controllable things the Knicks can control that I'm worried about. But like, and this is, I want to be very direct to you. Like, this is not a shot at the Pistons because I think their season has been phenomenal. And this is like an unequivocal, massive success for them either way. I think if the Knicks control those things, it'll be very, very hard for the Pistons to beat them. But I have, like, this is, I think, where the doubt for a lot of Knicks fans is coming in is, do we trust that we are going to control those things? Because these are things that they have not controlled well at all the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've said this many times on my podcast and on the other shows. The Knicks are the more talented team. They are 100% the more talented team. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. I think the 3 matchups after the first game, the Pistons being able to win all 3 of those matchups, and especially the ones at Madison Square Garden, where obviously Madison Square Garden in the playoffs is a little bit different. Obviously, it's even more tough to play at. But playing at Madison Square Garden is always, you got the bright lights, the celebrities, courtside, all that. And Cade showed up and showed out in all of those games. So there's belief that Cade is not going to shrink at times in the playoffs against the Knicks at home. I think that's some of the confidence from the Pistons side. To go at what you were talking about, really what you're bringing up is pressure points that the Knicks have and the pressure points that the Pistons have. And both these teams, I think, have pressure points that can be taken advantage of. I do believe that the Knicks theoretically should have more answers to the Pistons counters than the Pistons should have to the Knicks counters. Theoretically, they should. They have more talent. They have more versatility at their wing positions. They should be able to answer more of the questions. But like you've mentioned, in all of the matchups, they haven't really had the answers to the counters like you'd expect them to. And for a long majority of this season, especially like you mentioned, the starting lineup that they've had, the theoretical solutions that you think they should be able to get to, they just haven't gone to. So whether there's confidence that the Knicks, whether those actual answers are actual answers, or if they're just theoretical, do they have confidence in it? Do they have trust that they can go to those things? We'll see. But like, for example, I think a pressure point that the Knicks could attack against the Pistons that would be really hard for the Pistons to figure out is, I think the Pistons have one of the best players in the NBA that will guard Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson is going to be an incredible playoff player. He was an incredible playoff player last year. We know that he's a playoff riser. But if you can choose 5 players to guard Jalen Brunson at the point of attack, Asar Thompson is going to be one of them. So they have one of the best possible answers to Jalen Brunson that you could get is Asar. An answer that the Pistons just won't have for is OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges if they start getting usage in the half court. They don't have big wing defenders, especially for OG. Maybe they could put Cade on Mikal, and Cade maybe could do a good job on Mikal. But OG, they don't have a big wing that can handle him, which is part of the concern I had for Indiana. If you go against Pascal, they don't have an answer for Pascal. So if the Knicks were to decide, we're going to reduce the usage for Brunson, for Cat, we're going to continue to go through OG a little bit more within the half court, try to force this mismatch, force this, action in the half court. I think that's something the Knicks maybe could swing their way if OG's playing well and continues to play how he did at the end of the year. But I have questions about two of those things is, one, will Tom Thibodeau actually do that? Would he reduce the usage of Cat and Jalen to try to take advantage of a mismatch with OG? And 2, is the run that OG went on at the end of the year sustainable in a playoff run, and will he sustain that throughout a playoff series? If he does, I think that's a pressure point the Pistons could struggle with really answering. I think something that the Knicks could really struggle answering for the Pistons is, you brought up Josh Hart. If they play Josh Hart, which I think they're going to, I don't think Tom Thibodeau is just going to all of a sudden stop playing Josh Hart. He seems to really love him. If they do play Josh Hart, I think they're going to put Jalen Duren on Josh Hart, put Tobias on Cat, switch pick and rolls 1 through 5, and then have Duren help down the paint off of Josh Hart and just dare Josh Hart to beat them. Now, he did that last year to Philly. He shot really well against Philly, and that was one of the reasons why the Knicks came through. So if he does that, then, Pistons lose. But I think the Pistons will probably take their chances with that. And I think that's something they'll try to take advantage of. The Pistons offense, their half-court offense has not been the greatest. Their offense comes from transition, comes from fast break, comes from running up and down, getting turnovers, getting defensive stops, and going. And if they're able to attack that pressure point offensively by the Knicks, where they're just ignoring Josh Hart and forcing turnovers against the Knicks and forcing missed shots and helping down on Cat, who's not as good of a passer from the high post as he is off a live dribble, if they can force some of those mistakes and turnovers and get out in transition, I think that's where you've seen the Knicks get in trouble against the Pistons so far this year. I think that's where they could get into trouble against the Pistons in the playoffs.
Yeah. I think Detroit definitely has an athletic advantage. Again, I thought the games in New York, the Knicks, I'll be quite honest. I think the Knicks came into those games, especially the first one, because they'd smoked the Pistons earlier in the season. And I didn't think they approached that with the right focus. I thought they, quite honestly, looked past them, and they got punished for it. And they got punished for it early in those games, where you could just see Josh Hart's kind of lazily trying to poke the ball away from Asar Thompson in transition, and then Asar is just boom, gone. And stuff like that, like you can like, yes, the Knicks should be able to clean that up, but they have that real athletic disadvantage for sure if the game gets frenzied and it's up and down. I don't think there's any question about that. I did want to ask you, look, you talked about pressure points the Pistons have. Pick and pop bigs has been something that I have seen has been an issue for Detroit at times. I guess two parts of this question. One, do you think that is something where even if Josh Hart's on the floor, that's something the Knicks can attack, or at least weaponize? And then two, if the Knicks play big and they play Cat with Mitch at times, how do you feel about that? As how can the Pistons match up with that? Because I personally, like, if this was me coaching the team and not Tom Thibodeau, if I got the green light on like, hey, Mitch can play, normal, like whatever minutes, there's no minutes restriction, I would be starting with him. Like, I would be starting Brunson, I'd be starting McCall, I'd be starting OG, I'd be starting Cat and Mitch. I like, to your point, there's no indication that Tom Thibodeau is going to do something crazy because it's Tom Thibodeau. He doesn't do crazy things, at least not logical crazy things. But I guess, like, how do you feel about that as a potential thing that the Pistons have to prepare for?
Yeah, no, stretch bigs have killed them all year. Jalen Duren in space is not. He's gotten much better around the paint, protecting the paint, being a force inside. But get him out in space, that's when he starts to struggle. And stretch bigs really have killed the Pistons all year, which is why I do believe that the Knicks, if they do play Josh Hart, they'll try to hide Duren on Hart, and then they'll just try to switch 1-5 pick and roll with Cat, try to take away that pick and pop, and try to live with either the switch of Tobias on Brunson, then help in the gaps, or really see if the Knicks want to go to Cat at the top of the key against an Asar Thompson. I guess if he's the one guarding Jalen Brunson, he's the one to switch it. Does he really want to go at those matchups? Is that something the Knicks are willing to do every single time? And if the Pistons want to live with that, I think that would be one of the answers I'd have to the stretch big problem. But if they don't do that, because maybe they don't, maybe they just trust Duren on Cat and they try to go with that. I've said it before on my podcast. I think this could very well be an Isaiah Stewart series, because Isaiah Stewart, on the other hand, is very good in space. He's very good guarding on the perimeter. He's very good in switching schemes. So if Duren really can't handle Cat, they're not going with the unorthodox matchups of trying to hide and cross match, all that kind of stuff. They could just go with Stu, and I think Stu is a theoretical answer to that. Now, Cat, despite Stu, I thought playing incredible defense, he played like 19 straight minutes in the second half, would have closed out this last game against the Knicks if he didn't foul out. Cat still did have a pretty decent game against the Pistons, but Stu is one of the best options you're going to find defensively, that is, against a solution like that. So I think it very well could be just an Isaiah Stewart series, and they'll see if he can handle. He's much better closing out and then shuffling his feet and getting back into position. Much better with that. But overall, the stretch bigs have been an issue, and that certainly can be a spot where the Knicks, I mean, they have Cat. Cat's one of the best shooters of all time at that position. He definitely could kill the Pistons in that regard. But, I mean, this is another one of those questions I have for the Knicks, is that you like, this is the thing with the Knicks for me all year, because I was high on this team in the offseason coming in. I've been staying tuned with them throughout the year, is that these are like theoretical answers that you think that they would have, but yet, like, Cat's shooting way less threes this year. They're 27 3-point attempts. It's like, okay, well, this should be an answer, but will they go to it? What? So that's what I'm really watching for with the Knicks. But yeah, that's my feeling on the stretch big stuff. The double big is interesting, because if I'm looking at it from a Knicks fan's perspective, I would look at it and say that should work. That should help defensively. That moves Cat to where you probably would rather like him at the 4, not force him to have to be protecting the rim. You got Mitch down there. Mitch is a much better rim protector, obviously. That should help you defensively and really help you, maybe get out in transition a little bit more instead of getting the ball at the basket. From the Pistons perspective, I don't think the Knicks going double big should change anything that they're doing. I don't think that they should try to match it by going double big. I don't think they should try to put Stu and Duren on the floor. I think the Pistons should just see if that eliminates it. Does that decrease some of the offense? Does the offense, take a hit to try and boost the defense? Because the Pistons, if anything, the Pistons will live with, like, if the Knicks want to go defense for offense or offense for defense, the Pistons will live with that, because they want the offense to get worse. They want to get more missed shots, more stops, so they can run. That's where the Pistons are going to thrive. If they win this series, if they win games, it's going to be from them running. So I don't think they're going to bring in slower, bigger guys to try and match some size. They recently I'm sorry, I'm rambling here, but the Cavs, they played the Cavs 2 weeks ago without Cade, and everyone thought this game for sure they were going to lose this game. But they beat the Cavs fully healthy without Cade because they went Asar and Jalen Duren versus Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, and Jalen Duren and Asar Thompson completely dominated that matchup because Asar Thompson is one of the best non-big rebounders in the NBA. He's an incredible weak side rim protector. He's incredible on his rotations. He roams off of guys. And if you give him a guy that he can roam off of, or you can give Jalen Duren someone he can roam off of, they really can just dominate games on the defensive end and cause transition opportunities. So if the Knicks do go double big, I think that's something that both teams are probably looking at it like, this is a good matchup for us. I think the Knicks will look at it and be like, this is what we want. This is our secret sauce. We should be able to win this matchup. And I think the Pistons will look at it and say, we got Asar who's uniquely served for this kind of position. We should be able to take advantage of this and get out and transition a little more. So that's certainly a matchup I'm looking forward to seeing and which way it leans.